Okay, so I'm not questioning that these platforms, these major platforms like the one that I've discussed on my blog, many clips from there, that they're not just getting more open about my persecution and the likelihood that, you know, the government is basically corrupt and that they're, you know, likely one of the major players in the entire construct, since they're, you know, they're the ones that actually propagandize and that thing on a mass scale. So they're a formidable partition of the overall construct. So I don't question that they're not too concerned about whether or not there's anybody finding out or exposing them or blowing a whistle. Because one of the things that I said was, you know, in the chat that streams that broadcast, is that you know, I don't question that they, you know, they're not that concerned about anything. They have politicians on their platform, they have FBI, CIA as contributors to their content, and you know, they seem like they're in the driver's seat the entire time. That these people that they invite on have absolutely or very little to offer in the way of their having to be concerned about anything. And so, you know, seeing that that's the case, and, you know, hearing about when they do a story, say, about fraud or something like that, and that, you know, they'll bring up whistleblowers and that sort of thing. And don't get me wrong, they're not a legitimate, in my opinion, news agency. These are likely spy networks that are set up and disguised. They put the persona of a news network or media outlet. That's basically all they've ever been, in my opinion. There's no such thing as a place that actually wants to bring you the news or inform you about, you know, some thing that doesn't necessarily do something in return for them. And you know, and then in turn they can gain a foothold or sell or trade that information for something even better. And you know, like, you know, their great wealth and power that they have accumulated. And so, you know, me, I don't question being a big prize to these people. I've mentioned what has been taking place in my situation, and that there doesn't seem to be any possibility of outside of what I've already made an effort to do in the way of a whistleblow or anything like that. It's all just a fantasy that they make up. They want to pretend that it's a system where, okay, if, you know, you eventually break through the wall of resistance or something, that you could achieve this justice. You can access this justice, and in my opinion, that's just not the case. Unless, of course, they want it to be the case. And And like I say, they, in the situation where I am, Minnesota, the fraud and that sort of thing with Medicare and child care and housing and that sort of thing has likely been allowed to be uncovered at the time that they've also been, you know, essentially having me forced to live in this public housing facility that appears to be harmful and has absolutely devastated my health since I've lived in these two recent apartments, that one I'm still in at the moment, and how they cover it up and how they get out of having to be accountable for that, while very likely continuing the process. And so they say, oh, whistleblower this and whistleblower that, and you know, there appears to be a cover-up, and they'll show these people on TV, you know, senators and that sort of thing, or some congressional hearings, or you know, what have you, and make it appear as if, you know, there were people that were corrupt evading the situation to the point that it continued on until, conveniently, until the time that they also are keeping me in these horrible conditions. Nothing short of a gulag or concentration camp, and likely knowing, you know, which units are the most harmful, and I don't question assigning those to their, you know, political or ideological adversaries. And so as I basically went through nearly every office that I could think of, and I wouldn't question there's 20 or close to it, including politicians, you know, legal representation, non-profit type organizations, and not one of them has done anything on my behalf, except for one person. And that one person that was assisting me and was not giving up got offered a job, a position as a CEO for a major nonprofit. And that was possibly something that they took as you know, as an opportunity that may not come along, you know, for some time again. Possibly the phrase, they made them an offer they couldn't refuse, even though, you know, you can always refuse something, but, you know, since they didn't refuse it, I don't know if couldn't refuse could still be used in that context. But that's a famous saying, especially in like organized crime and that sort of thing, if I'm not mistaken. They make an offer you can't refuse, because if you do refuse, it may not work out quite as well. And So they went ahead and took that position, and then the person that followed up after them also was offered a position, and they left. And then the person that was on the city council lost the election, and they were actually voted out. So now this new council person has done nothing for me, not even returned my calls. They called originally when they were unsure of the reason why I was calling, possibly, or I only left a vague message, and after they may have found out the seriousness of the situation, I don't question that they found out a little bit more about what's going on. They have not called me back, because they've said also that there was another person that had that similar complaint that had contacted them besides me. And so, you know, like I say, I don't question that they're covering this up, especially when I have been through all these offices, including the mayor, you know, Jacob Fry, and they're probably some of the most complicit in that they just don't even return my emails or calls. If I go to their office, they don't answer the call box. Somehow, I don't know if they know it's me, if there's a camera on that call box, like a Ring camera or something, but they do not answer when it's me, but they answer when it's somebody else. I watched them do it. Somebody went to their call box before I got there, and they got an answer, and when they were done talking, I pushed the button, and they did not answer. So, you know, I don't question that they're covering that up. And, you know, because it's such a big deal. And it may be actually a full real life, you know, American gulag or concentration camp. I don't question that they run those and they have those, but they don't ever let that information get out if possible, which is why they don't ever do anything about it, especially when I go to so many offices to try to access justice, or, you know, to get some sort of idea of what can be done. So far, nothing. And Amy Klobuchar's office has not offered me any information as to who they claim to have contacted about the matter. And but what has happened since I've contacted Amy Klobuchar is that the people that run my building have had multiple inspections that they don't normally have, and they've also demanded that people now have actually like a white glove inspection on their house, on their apartment, where you have to actually not have dust or things like that, or they take pictures and possibly have somebody come and clean it for you. And so that has happened since I've contacted Amy Klobuchar. So I don't question Amy Klobuchar may actually be working with public housing to try to somehow, you know, get around having to get a hold of HUD in the federal office building, and not just this local one that's as corrupt as public housing. Or I don't question is as corrupt as public housing, because I've contacted them also. And they're, I mean, that's, you know, it's draining dealing with these people. When you deal with the devil, basically, it is just so demanding on your spirit. Sometimes it has been on mine anyway, that they just drain you. And then of course the actual health matters from the building and the apartment and that sort of thing, that's destroying my health on top of that. And then, you know, it's like death by 1,000 cuts. You know, they continue to do these things that are just alone, one of those things could just destroy you. But instead of just one thing that could destroy you, they just multiply them. And so that's kind of how they're doing it here. And so when people say, oh, whistleblower, and oh, you just have to contact, one of these people and, touch the hem of their garment, so to speak, and, there'll be, things will get better, and so far that hasn't even been remotely the case. I've called politicians out of state. Jim Jordan's office told me, oh, we don't do anything for people outside of our constituency. But what do I hear Jim Jordan talking about? Hunter Biden. And how much he would like to get Hunter Biden in front of the committee or the board or whatever they sit on. And I thought to myself, Hunter Biden, I question, is one of Jim Jordan's constituents. So really it's not such a matter of being their constituent. It's a matter of whether or not they feel like they want to do something, or not feel, but whether or not they actually, want to do something or not. And so you see and Jim Jordan's on one of these platforms that I've mentioned that's been basically not just a spy network, but like a terror network in regards to my life. They basically are one of the major platforms that concentrate their content on, if at any time I were to tune in, they would have it prepared and like a well-oiled machine that just keeps putting out these what would I call them, intimidations, or including these details that are basically the same as my name. Some people say, well, they don't say your name or something and that makes the difference, but it doesn't make the difference to me. They know my details. They know my birthday. They know my name. They know my Bible study information concerning 521, or the numbers on my Bible studies and my biblical content that I produce. Those are my personalized copyright numbers that I chose for myself, and they know details and that they can use. That was basically their system before the internet came along too, like the radio stations and that sort of thing. Those were their thugs back in the day. The shock DJs, or even the program directors and that sort of thing, where they would lay out certain songs one after another, and that would kind of be like, Southern man, Southern's my last name, and then this and that, and then it would just add on to the story and continue on, usually until there was some message that they wanted to convey. But that's basically how they did it. Especially then they would play like, there's never been any reason for you to think about me, and that was like usually their mockery song, like, no matter what we do, you're not going to be able to prove it to anybody. There's never been any reason for you to think about me. I'm not too sure who sings that, or what the name of the song is right offhand. If I can, let me see. There's never been any reason for you to think about me song. Okay, it's called Head East is the name of the group. Never been any reason. And so that was their other one. And Rock and Roll Fantasy was another one. It's all part of my rock and roll fantasy. And because you know, these people are, you know, they're not dumb, and just because they became DJs or they play music doesn't mean they're, you know, less intelligent. And they seem to basically want to convey that. So it's kind of getting closer to the city now, pollution time. It's been pretty bad back there too, but I didn't put my mask up yet because I wanted to communicate that. I'll put it on pause until I get a little bit further away from this.